Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again, and I wanted to introduce you to my next character, which was an Ethereal Knives Trickster, but I also want to give you just a bit of a wrap up and conclusion on the Divine Ire Inquisitor, because I did still play it for a few days after my last video, and took on just a little bit of endgame content, didn't actually get to Tier 16 Guardians or Uber Elder because my map pool was just somewhat limited, and I was fairly focused on doing so much other stuff like my Betrayal, my Nexus, as well as, Temples, Delve, all of that shit just made it a bit hard to strictly focus on Uber Elder. So I did get a Tier 15 Elder down, and it was actually really smooth in the end. So the character was damn near impossible for me to put down. Usually I move on to another character after 4 or 5 days, something like that. This one got 8 days playtime, I think. Real time 8 days, but effective playtime something like 2.5 days, which is probably double what most of my characters get, because it was just, for me, simply so much fun to play. I really did take to Divine Ire as a skill quite fondly, and I thought it was very nice in the playstyle and just satisfying in the way you go. It's not too fast, it's not too slow, it's very satisfying in the charge up, the wind up, the shatters, and all of that. Whereas if you'll compare it to my next character, which is the Ethereal Knives one, it is a lot faster, and it's kind of less satisfying in that realm somehow. So this is just a bit of an example of what we have against Tier 15 Elder with DPS. You can see, can take a fair amount of damage here or there if you're not prepared against it, but we dish out quite a lot as well. It's still very budget. I don't think just about any of my gear costs anything except for maybe the Watcher's Eye that had Arcane Surge on it, which by no means is necessary. It is very much similar to a 3-prop regular jewel, so don't look at that thing and feel like it's going to be too expensive. The rest of the gear is pretty pathetically cheap, and then the staff that I made could be hugely improved upon. Even just by wearing a Disintegrator, you'll gain a lot more damage, which should be a fairly also budget option at this point in the league. But a 6-link is fairly important, I'd say, for maximizing your damage, and that's why I went with a cheap 6-link staff and then just crafted something on it. This is the Tier 15 Elder example, and you do have a little bit of a difficult playstyle against some of these bosses. If they're doing lots of stuff, you have to stand still, channel, and unleash a beam, and you want to make sure you're somewhat near the enemy so that you can get your 20 stacks charged up faster, and there is quite a lot of setup if you want to maximize your damage before a boss fight as well. This is an Uber Series run that I did, ended up being deathless as well. Almost everything and every piece of content I did was deathless. I did end up hitting level 94.5 off of the fairly limited map pool that I had, because like I said, I did put a fair bit of work into the character in the end because I just really wanted to, and it was a lot of fun. So it was a very well-rounded character, pretty good starter. I started with no currency, no gear, and yet could ramp up all the way into whatever content you want to be able to do. So I'd say Divine Ire, under just about every circumstance, is well worth doing. I then asked my stream if they wanted to see a self-cast character of some sort, and for the most part, they really wanted to see some Ethereal Knives action. Ethereal Knives did get buffed quite largely in this patch expansion sort of thing. It gained something like 50% damage, and it wasn't really too bad in the previous patches and iterations. It just wasn't that amazing because the single target would eventually fall off and it would feel a little bit awkward as an entire complete character. So usually you would supplement it with some Vile Blade Vortex, something like that. This time around, I am trying to maintain pure Ethereal Knives as my actual skill of choice, and it is a Trickster, and it is built around the Eternity Shroud chest. Now, I bought that chest because it was only about 1 Exalt at the time, managed to link it up, and now it's got 6 links, and I'm running 2 wands that have immense amounts of proj speed on them, which is why my Ethereal Knives looks like it can off-screen pretty handily. I do have a lot of cast speed since I'm a Trickster, and as well as that, I hit pretty damn hard with the Eternity Shroud combo. Since I have a shaped item in every slot, I gain something like 50% Elemental as Chaos, and then ignore all enemy Chaos resist. I don't think it's strictly necessary to build around that one, or even really carrying EK at all at this case, because well, I have to wear some pretty garbage gear, as you'll see in most of my slots, given how I do have to go for the Shaper items, and ultimately it's probably about the same damage as just building an okay level Ethereal Knives. Unless you're really truly min-maxing and spending a lot on your Shaper gear, you're not going to get that much out of this chest, and I'm definitely going to be misusing it in this case because I'm not even stacking all kinds of physical into elemental conversion and then several different layers of elemental conversion, which actually make this chest busted and OP, and I'll go over that in just a second as to how you can make this chest truly overpowered, because it is similar to all the other elemental as chaos mods that we had in the past that could create several overpowered styles of winter orb and many other type of skills as well. This is a pretty just stock standard Ethereal Knives where I'm stacking a bunch of damage, I guess, some good approach speed, some good cast speed, and running chain as my main clear accessory. So you should be able to see that my EK spreads out pretty far and then also chains a couple of times here or there. And I have tried out Fork, I have tried out Pierce, and I think chain clears the best and it has the nicest feel as a map style support. However, for bossing and all of that, it's obviously not ideal and you should swap into something like Pierce, maybe even Hypothermia. There's still more tests to go for the Fork style of things as well though, but for now I think chain, once you have an appropriate level of damage, feels the best for this character. As a Trickster, you just can't really go wrong. You run so fast, you cast so fast, you get so much crit and quality of life stuff, because I am testing out the Ghost Shrouds and the whole hybrid sort of situation lifestyle. Basically any skill I put in here is going to be a Clearspeed monster, and then it's up to whether or not you can maintain some good defense and some good single target. But Trickster is just such a flavor of the month and such a strong ascendancy for clearing, you really can't go wrong. This is the only endgame or sort of single target test I've performed thus far, and that is a tier 8 Elder, because the character has still not seen too much content, but it has leveled extremely fast. It's taken me like 12 hours to get to level 89, I think. So this is something like a tier 8 Elder. I am using a Flame Totem as an additional damage support, and also using Winter Orb to help keep up my power charges and frenzy charges because of the Swift Killer ascendancy on Trickster. Every time you channel, you will gain charges. So I'm also trying to utilize Winter Orb as a bit of damage while I'm charging up those stacks, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. So the challenge is to get enough single target on EK that doesn't feel bad, because the clear is always going to be pretty nice. So the character we're going over today here is a currently level 88 Trickster called Wide EK Happy, EK being Ethereal Knives. So the skill we're building around is Ethereal Knives here. It did gain a fairly large damage buff in the patch, and as you can see, you do want some good projectile speed. It has some on the skill itself if it's qualityed up, and then I'm using some really crappy gear based around this chest. So the chest itself is what is supposed to be built around in my current setup, so it gives 5 LE damage as extra chaos per shaper item equipped. If you have all your items shaped, then it's 50%, and then hits ignore enemy chaos, which isn't that big a deal. Not too many things have a lot of chaos, but it certainly helps if you can get it against plenty of sort of map mods and maybe a couple of bosses out there. But to make this happen at this early stage with my current fairly mediocre currency stack, I do wear a lot of crap gear. So we're looking at just all kinds of stuff that's trying to be hybrid, some life and some energy shield, so I can be kind of hybrid in nature, and most of it's self-crafted and just crap. So we've got, you know, bit of life, bit of resist on just about everything, so nothing special happening here whatsoever, except for maybe the amulet. You do like some extra physical as cold or lightning. This thing only costs like 15C though, because basically those are the only 2 mods on it. And then I rolled myself an assassin mark ring just for some quality of life as well. So nothing too special about the gear. I think if you completely ignored this chest and did something else, you know, just a regular chest, maybe a lore weave, a +1 shaper chest, something like that, you could still have a similar damage output to my current build, because my current build doesn't really abuse the chest in any way. The big abuse of something like this is if you get 50 Ellie as extra chaos, for example. Let's say you have all the shaped items, you get 50 Ellie as extra chaos. If you are then converting your damage several times, you get that 50 Ellie as chaos for each conversion. So for example, if I turned my Ethereal Knives into pure lightning damage, or if I went Divine Ire, for example, and had pure lightning damage, you then use Call of the Brotherhoods, 2 of them, let's just say. You convert almost all of your lightning to cold. You then grab most of your cold damage and convert it to fire with a cold to fire. You are getting 50 Ellie as chaos onto the original lightning, onto the cold, and then onto the fire as well. So that's how you can actually abuse this type of item and this type of mod quite proficiently, but in this case I really don't have that much abuse. I just have a bit of physical converted to elemental at the moment, which is about 73% with these gloves and the Ethereal Knives being converted with Fizz to Lightning. So I've got about 73% Ellie as Fizz to begin with on my EK, and then I get that Ellie as Chaos from that. And then I do have a few other sources of additional elemental from here, from Hatred, from Ash. So you can see that my damage currently is split almost everywhere. I've got a lot of cold, a fair amount of fizz still, a lot of fire, a lot of lightning, and then a shit load of chaos. So it's kind of all over the place. It's by no means a busted build. It's just supposed to be a fairly well working and strong EK to showcase the skill that can at this point work rather well for clear and still be respectable enough in single target. So my wands are absolutely pathetic. They've just got some proj speed. As a matter of fact, that's basically all they have, some proj speed. And the way I'm going to help fix my single target in the end is to have a weapon swap. So I'm just going to simply go weapon swap into a couple of shaped scepters that also have mods like this. Additional as extra cold, additional as extra lightning, that sort of stuff. And hopefully reallocate my auras somewhere else so that I can actually make that quick swap just for bosses. And if I have the right scepters, I should be able to just about double my damage on boss fights. Instead of going for proj speed, because the proj speed is pretty valuable when you're clearing. You can see that you get a lot of proj speed that way through these wands. Without it, you're looking probably like half the clear. So it's not a big deal without having the proj speed. You can still probably manage, but it's a lot nicer to have that proj speed. It's just that when we go into single target, we don't really need that proj speed, and that's why I'll try and get a couple of shaped scepters. You could obviously go a shield instead as well, because that does fit the hybrid lifestyle pretty nicely, and maybe I'll look into that too over the next stream or two for this character. But that's basically the character. It's pretty simple. In the end, I suppose it's pretty simple. It's just EK that starts out as a lot of fizz. You're then trying to convert some, if not all, to elemental. I don't really have much elemental penetration at the moment because primarily I have gone for that chaos focus. If you use a Shroud of the Lightless instead, it's a pretty cheap 6-link. You can then just convert a lot of your damage into elemental there and get a lot of penetration out of it as well. That's probably the most budget and easiest way of building a trickster with physical skills at the moment. A Shroud of the Lightless, grab any physical skill, EK, Divine Ire, Purifying Flame, Wave of Conviction, Bladefall, Blade, Vortex, whatever the hell you want. And then you'll have quite a lot of success, I think, because this is pretty flavor of the month at the moment and a fairly strong setup. That's what the passive tree looks like. We do get plenty of physical stuff. We do get plenty of crit, some good quality of life in cast speeds and cooldown recovery. This overall just gives us a lot of cast speed, and then I'm trying to become somewhat hybrid. So I've got the hybrid nodes there, might grab these life ones as well in the end. Not a huge amount of hybridity going on right here. 4k life, 2k ES, I'll probably up that by a little bit still, and then a bunch of mana so that I can actually end up casting. My only 2 reservations at the moment are Hatred and Herald of Ash. But you could build it a number of different ways using a number of different auras at the moment. I don't think there's any one way to do this, but that's just my little way of doing it at the moment. And these are my links: Ethereal Knives, Crit Strikes, Fizz to Lightning, Energy Leech, Unleash, and Chain. So the only other thing I'll go over right now is the Unleash support. If you are currently completely unfamiliar with it, I'm going to go over what Unleash does. So it stacks up to 3 times on your skill. As you can see here, the skill will now have 3 stacks. It stacks up slowly, so it's roughly at level 19 or 20, it gets a bit faster. So every 0.7 seconds, you get another stack. So as you can see here, if I right click with my current 3 additional stacks, I will shoot out 4 EKs. And then slowly it stacks up to 3 again, and then you shoot out another 4. If you just keep on spamming, you'll only get your single EK with the occasional secondary EK. But the idea behind Unleash is so that it's supposed to help your clear for general mapping, but not be very good for single target. So if you're going from one pack to the next every couple of seconds, you should honestly be able to shoot out 4 EKs instead of using Spell Echo, for example, and standing still, shooting twice. This lets you stand still, shoot once, and shoot out 4 EKs. So for the most part, for clear, it has felt pretty good, and I haven't actually needed to swap into Echo yet. I might do that for some later mapping, maybe for some single target, but I've been using Unleash on this build the entire time, and it is pretty smooth. So just to give you an example, you're running around, you spam once, you get all 4 off, you can go to the next pack, you get all 4 off. Most packs you will, for the most part, get at least 2 EKs shot out, so in general it should be better than Echo because of that. You should be able to get at least like 2 casts out of your 1 cast, thus making it a pretty efficient clear support. Who knows though, you can try out other stuff and see if you like it more, just faster casting, Echo, whatever else, but Unleash does seem to be a pretty nice support for additional clear speed, and it seems to work rather well. Haven't had to take out Unleash for single target yet, but it's definitely not optimal for single target, so we'll see. Maybe it's better for an Ubriel fight where you want to run around a bit, Unleash, run around, Unleash. Maybe it's still worth it. For now though guys, I haven't done too much endgame content, so that's where we're at, but that's the character so far. Maybe I'll give you another update if he goes through a few more changes and does some more content. Hope you enjoyed the little EK rundown. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.